Welcome to the Lost in Possession podcast. Here today is my Premier League prediction for the upcoming season. We're doing this a bit early, but let's get straight into it. Even though this transfer window hasn't closed, I think we can predict the league quite well. I'm going to go in threes. So starting off, I'm going Ipswich bottom. I'm going Southampton 19th and Brentford 18th. Jordan Reese, are you surprised by any of these picks?
I would like to hear your reasoning between the choices, to be honest, because I think it's not uncommon to pick these three. But yeah, I would quite like to know the reasoning why between them.
I think Brentford's the one that stands out, obviously, not promoted.
Yeah.
And didn't do terribly last season, but didn't do well. So
yeah.
What's your logic, basically?
So I'll start with Ipswich, to be fair. The signings they've made, I just look at it and I think they're all championship signings. They've signed Delap from City sort of under 21s. I think he'd do well in the championship. They've signed Muric from Burnley. He wasn't even first choice and Burnley went down. Not that exciting about the transfers. Southampton really the same. I just think Southampton, scraped to get up in the playoff. Sometimes that does work, but I just don't feel they've not made themselves strong enough to go, yeah, we're going to overtake one of these players lower down. And Brentford, I think they're going to be a bit of a sinking ship, unfortunately. I think they've done well to stay in the Premier League as long as they have, but year on year, I think they're getting a bit more worse. So that's kind of where I am with Brentford. I think there's going to be one Premier League team going down and one of the promoted teams staying up. And as you can see, I've picked Brentford to go down and Leicester will stay up for me. If I move on to my next three, so then 17th, I've got Fulham. 16th is Leicester. And then 15th is Forest. Once again.
So you're going Leicester despite the points deduction and the loss of their manager to stay up. You think they're going to do that?
Have they got the points deduction confirmed? So this is I think I have to have a caveat over I don't know the points deduction because the biggest points deduction in history might be coming to my own club in City. So I might have City 20th for that same prediction.
Yeah, I think we'll all be wrong if those 115 charges come through.
Yeah, I think that's a whole different matter. So I'm going to go with a bit of a caveat of no points deduction. So I might be wrong in that with the Leicester one. So it's a fair point. But I think in terms of actual points they get, I think they do enough to stay up.
I mean, it's when they decide to implement it, isn't it? If it's a points deduction that starts at the start of the season, that's a little bit easier. If it's a points deduction where they're struggling, then they get it. That's going to make things a little bit more difficult. But it hangs over their heads quite a bit. I mean, the recruitment's been okay, I suppose. But Forest is an interesting one as well, because I think a lot of people are expecting them to try and finally break out of that mid-tier, but they don't seem to lower to mid part of the table, but they don't seem to look like they're going to.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the teams I've put above them, and I'm just like, I don't see them being better than any of them. Like, they may get one. I don't see them getting any further than, say, 12th. Good enough as a whole squad kind of thing. I think they improved in the second half of the season last year after getting rid of Cooper, but it's still not enough for me.
And what's
the Forest? They showed a bit towards the end of last season, I thought. Like Hudson-Odoi coming through.
Just didn't think that much.
Fulham is a surprising one for me as well. They've spent big on Emil Smith-Rowe. They've got a decent side.
But they've lost They lost one of their main centre-backs in Tosin to Chelsea. They lost Polina. I think they're not going to improve enough, and they're banking on. I think Muniz last season did well, but is that kind of like a blip for one season's kind of wonder, if that makes sense? So I think they're going to struggle scoring wise.
I think
I don't think they're
that's
good enough defensively to get over that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, their best player is Polina. We've all said how good he is. He's finally got his dream move. And if you take the best player outside, they're probably going to struggle. Fulham feels rogue. I know what you mean, Reece. But the logic kind of does make sense. And you've got to remember Smith Rowe has done nothing, really. Like, yes,
he's a good player, but I think he's also a bit of, as harsh as this might sound, he's a bit of a luxury player.
Well, he's not Saka, is he? Like, the reality is, just because he grew up with Saka, like, it doesn't mean
fighting for the title.
Yeah.
Like Fulham aren't. So I think he will do well at Fulham, but I just don't see him. I think they need probably a full-on replacement for Polina, and I don't think Smith Rowe is it. I think they need another one or two, really. Let me move on to my next three picks. So I've got Wolves in 13th, if this lets me do it. Palace in their 13th place, and then I've got Everton in 12th.
Palace, that's low.
You think that's low? What they're apart from last season, they're standard 13th place.
Yeah, I know, but
and they've again lost
big assumption. They have just lost Elise,
and this is obviously before transfers have happened, but there are still links of Eze leaving. So I can't put them much higher up. I just don't see it. And I can't remember the striker's name. It's Matata.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was brilliant towards the end of the season. But once again, is he going to show that again? I'd be surprised if he's as good this season as he was last.
Yeah, they've also got Edouard as well. It's like if Mateta doesn't perform, Edouard's there waiting, and he's more than capable.
But he's always been. I've never fully rated him as a goal scorer, and that's why I don't think Palace will score enough goals unless they keep Eze, and Eze's absolutely on fire all season. But you've seen he gets injured as well, so he can't fully go. He's going to be fully fit constantly. So that's my problem with Palace, really.
Yeah, I mean, Elise is a baller. We all know that, but I would argue they've got a replacement, Ismail Assar. People say, "Oh, he's not as good," but he's done it. He's done it in the Prem before. He's looked sharp. Like he's a very similar style of player, let's say. So I don't know if he hits the ground running. I think Palace will be all right.
Yeah, I don't think they'll go down. I think they're fully safe, and I think they are better than teams that I've put below them. So they won't go down. I just don't see how they're going to progress up the league much.
Yeah, fair. What about Everton?
Yeah, Everton or Wolves?
Wolves, I don't mind Wolves there personally. I think Everton, I don't know, Everton feels a bit higher.
Well, you've got to remember they had 2 points deductions last season, comfortably stayed up, and had one of the best defences in the league. And that defence isn't really changing. Really, they've sold Onana. That is the biggest one for them.
I don't think that's a huge loss for them. I think they've improved their side this summer. It's the first time in a long time they've actually been able to improve their squad. And with the last season at Goodison, I think they're going to go for something here. Wolves, I think it's fair. I think Gary O'Neill's proven people wrong, but when they secured survival, they just took their foot off it. That was poor. They could be at risk of doing that again if they're not careful.
Yeah, Wolves also picked some very good results last season. I watched it against City. Spurs saw it. I think it was United. They did it against United as well. They can perform well. But yeah, you're right, Reece. They did completely take the foot off the gas. So they shouldn't continue. They shouldn't start like that. But it doesn't look like they're going to start like trying to push for a last of the European places, or at least higher up the league. Right, I'll move on to the next three. So I've got Brighton in 11th, Bournemouth 10th, and West Ham 9th.
Yeah, I think looking at those there, I think Brighton have got a manager no one's really sure about just yet. We've seen their philosophy and the way they work. It's no real surprise. I don't get the hype around German coaches these days. Not Klopp. He's elite level. I just don't get the hype around it. If you look at them in Germany, they're pretty bang average. That's not me being disrespectful. I just think that's the way it is until the game evens itself out. So unproven what he's going to do. But it's interesting nonetheless. Bournemouth, I think, will be aiming for a pretty good season. I think they're just going to only be looking up. Keeping Solanke is going to be important to them.
Yeah, if Solanke does leave, they'd have to drop down this list, really, because he's massive for them. He's the one that makes them tick, in my opinion. So yeah, he is the worry of putting them this high up. But their manager has sort of, proven the sort of owners right for sacking O'Neill and bringing him in, because he's done really well at Bournemouth.
I think Sinisterra as well, just looking at their signings, Bournemouth. Sinisterra, I think, could be quite a good signing.
Yeah. What about West Ham? How do you two see that?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't disagree with that. I think they're a new manager, a manager who we know has the ability. Bit of a new era, it'll feel like, for West Ham. Really good business. Somerville coming in. Fulkrug, I think, is phenomenal signing. Done a TikTok on that. Giving Antonio a bit of competition. It means Bowen will hopefully go back in his natural position out wide. And when you look at their attack now, Fulkrug up front, Somerville, Bowen, Kudus, you've got a serious attack there. Like, really serious attack. If they can string it together and it all works, I think West Ham could be a real threat this season.
Yeah. The only worry I do have is you see teams that do well in the transfer window and you go, right, they should have a good season because of the signings, and it doesn't work out. That's my only worry with what West Ham are doing. There's no logic, there's no like reasoning behind it. It's just sort of like you win the window, if that makes sense, and then you just don't perform to the level people expect.
Yeah.
But it'll also be interesting what West Ham fans see about it, because you got rid of Moyes in the same position I'm putting them in, but it's very difficult for West Ham to get higher places without the teams above them having a shocker of a season. And then you had Chelsea had a shocker of a season last year and still got easily above them. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to West Ham or Chelsea, but it's kind of, there is a level of gap there, and it's so difficult to overcome, I think.
Yeah, really good point.
I'll move on. My last place before the European positions is Aston Villa. And then I'll go with 7th is going to be United. And then 6th will be Chelsea. So I think I'll explain Villa, because Villa might seem low considering, they got 4th, they got Champions League last season. And that's what I think is going to be their problem. They've played Champions League. You remember, there's 2 extra games in it now, so it's even more of a distraction. And it's whether they can cope with it with their whole squad, because they're a team that have won it before, so they really want to focus on the Champions League. The fans will be buzzing to have it back, and I think that will distract them from the league. Playing at least 8 games for it, I think, will be a distraction for them.
Well, yeah, to be honest, we saw it a bit with Newcastle last season. Although they ultimately got knocked out, and then you can argue there's less games, it felt like that's what the players and fans really probably cared about. I know it doesn't always work that way, but they had those big nights, PSG, Dortmund, Milan, maybe that took a drain on them. And you're right, if Villa have that hype, very similar situation, and they've got more games, I think that's a fair point. Villa maybe could slide down a bit.
What about United and Chelsea? Could be seen as low?
I think this is one of the real contenders. These ones going to finish, because I don't think any of us can really work them out at this moment in time. United showed in the FA Cup final that when they click, they are one of the better teams in this league. And then they go and put in some abject performances just after that. I know pre-season you can't look too much into that, but they then go and perform so poorly. And this is really probably Ten Hag's last chance to try and prove people wrong. He had a great end to the season. He really did, but and they've invested quite well, but they've already lost their young centre back for 3 months. You got
I don't think they have invested that well at the moment. It's sort of like they've bought another young striker in Zerki. They've bought a young centre back who's now injured for a while. I don't see what the big improvement is over United. Yes, they beat City in the FA Cup, but let's be honest, City were very poor that day. It was, it was a one-off game, and if you look over the rest of that season, they were conceding chances that were in line with Luton and nearly Sheffield United. So I this is why they're 7th for me, because I think it's hard for the other teams to break that gap. But I just don't see it with United. At the moment, they may, if they go and sign another 3 or 4 players, I could change my mind. But at the moment, I just don't see it.
They've improved, I think, their coaching staff. I know they lost Steve McLaren, didn't they, to Jamaica in what is the most football manager appointment I've ever seen. But Van Nistelrooy, I think, backed it up as a good head coach at PSV. He's joining as an assistant now with Rene Hack, which I think is a good thing. Now I think we're going to see the players hopefully fire a little bit more. Still think they need to sort out their medical team for the style he likes to play to avoid those injuries. But I think they have improved the team. I think they've shifted out a couple of the players that they could have shifted out. They've still got to shift out a few more, but I see potential in them. When they click, they're very good.
Jordan, any comments on Chelsea putting them, 6th?
I mean, it's just spin the roulette wheel. You just can't. I do agree. These positions now, we are really getting into it. I think are extremely tough to really predict, honestly, because you've got United. You're right. I agree with you, Jamie, on this one. I look at United and go, you spent 90 million. You've got a centre back. Yeah, he's all right. 60 mil. I don't think he's going to elevate them. Obviously, he's injured now anyway, so he's not going to do anything. But I don't think he elevates them that much, personally. I think United fans are just getting a bit excited because there's nothing else to cheer about. Xerxes, again, I've not seen enough of him. I know he's very, very highly rated. But again, is he going to come in and make a huge impact from day one? I don't see it, personally. And I think as well, Ten Hag, it's make or break time. Because if they have a rough start, and they're 10th, 11th in the table, like Chelsea were at one point last season, I think Ten Hag will be gone because he is under serious pressure now. They've stuck with him, and if they have a rough start, I think they'll, it will be squeaky bum time for Ten Hag. So, I can't really fight against either of these. But I think on Chelsea, great squad in theory, but bit of a circus at the minute. There's a new manager.
I think you might focus on the Conference League. I know the teams aren't great in it, but it weirdly is a competition that makes you the only team in the world who have won every European competition.
They'd be mad not to go for it.
No.
They'd be the best team on paper.
So it could be a distraction for you from the league, and you've been very inconsistent for the last 2 years now. So it's kind of you should sort of touch wood for you is you should beat every team that you play against. There should be no one you actually fear. So you should really go, we're going to win this, so we can say we've won it all, absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Whereas sort of, it now that this competition's come in, no other team can say it at the moment. So that's where I find it, where you might be distracted, really.
Yeah, I think you can flip it either way. I think you can flip it and say it's a distraction because there's going to be some dirty away days, on a Thursday night, and it's going to be rough. But also you can flip it and say, look, we've got the squad to deal with it. It's a welcome. It's something we need. We need more games. And because the standard is lower, you could also flip it and go, well, actually, it can give us a chance to actually build some momentum and confidence. And also, I 100% agree we have to win it. And it is also a potential bit of insurance to get European football. If you win it, you get you get the Europa League. So if we have a bad season and we win that, then we're still in Europe. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Into my next sort of 3 picks. So I'm going to go with Spurs 5th, Newcastle 4th, and Liverpool 2nd. Any surprises out of these 3?
Wait, Liverpool 3rd, yeah?
Liverpool 3rd, yeah.
I don't know. Newcastle 4th feels a bit bold.
So with that, you got to remember Pope was out all of last season, and as good as Dubravka is, Pope is a lot better than him. I think last season you had Trippier, who probably had one of his worst seasons in a number of years. He'll probably be going. You've got Livramento, Hall, Kelly, sort of as the replacements there. I think they will buy Guy from Palace, and that will strengthen up their defence. So I think they'll be a lot better defensively than they were last season. So that's kind of where it is, and they haven't got the distraction of Champions League and properly focusing on that. I know they still are playing European football, but no, they're not. They're not playing European football either. So I think that will get them back to 4th.
Just looking at these 3 choices here. So I'll start with Spurs before I make this. So Spurs, I think, the Ange team, I think we're still not sure what we're going to get. They've got that Kevin Keegan entertainers about them, but as we know about these entertaining teams, they never achieve. They've got the squad. I still think it lacks depth. They need a striker, probably. Archie Gray's a fantastic player, don't get me wrong, but I think they still need a couple of players. Newcastle, again, without the European distraction, it's great, but they need to do some business now. They've got they signed some young, hungry, up and coming players, but they need to add a little bit more, again, squad depth. As we saw what they had last year, they were knackered. Isaac stays fit. They're laughing. They're good at the back. Eddie Howe realistically is one of, if not the best coach of making players better in the league. He has made, some of them players world class. So it'd be interesting to see what they go with them. Arne Slot, interesting first choice for his first season. Probably going to be some teething problems to start, but I'm a big fan of his, and I think they will get top 4.
Another wild card though, new manager.
Again, that's the only worry about it. But just looking at the teams, I think Liverpool's team are still very good. So I think it's sort of like, I think Slot's problem will come in the 2nd year, the 3rd year, where players are getting to the age where they are going to retire close to. So I think he's going to be okay for a season. The next season, I think he might struggle. Then I guess onto the top 2. I did struggle with this. And I'm going to be honest, I went with my own bias and I put City top. I've done us do 5 in a row and put Arsenal 2nd. I was very close to going Arsenal to win the league. But I think them signing a left back or centre back left back hasn't done what I think Arsenal need to do. I think they need another winger to fight with, so they have the cover for Saka to be rotated. Then they've got Trossard, they've got Martinelli. If they have a 4, so them 3+1, I think will massively help. Or you put Jesus possibly on the wing, and you get a solid striker who's going to score your goals. and Havertz has done well, but he's still not that prolific goal scorer like you get with Solanke, Tony, for example. These are players that you could buy that I think would actually take you to probably win the league. So that's where I've gone. Like I said, it is a little bit of bias. I'm not gonna hide that. But yeah, City to win the league.
There you go. I'm not surprised by that, but actually the fact you're doubting yourself with City is telling. Let's say that. So that is pretty much all we've got time for. That wraps us up for another episode. As always, we're going to have more episodes of these coming out for all three of us this week. So make sure you stay tuned, subscribed, and notifications are on. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.
Here we go.